Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. Grit, how it is the secret advantage for all BJJ practitioners. Now, there's plenty of us out there, we think we're tough because we do BJJ, but what is the toughness inside you? Now, some of you may think you are not tough, but BJJ has an amazing quality in improving this, and we unpack exactly why. Also, what is the link to mental and physical trauma, and how does that help you in terms of dealing with what you're going to get on the mat? Last but not least, how can you build grit and resilience, and how can this help your BJJ? Both Joey and I talk about our own experiences, how this has informed our jiu-jitsu, and how we have used it to help us move forward and get better. Let's get into the episode now. Also, whether you're pretty or you gritty, what we would appreciate is that you give us a like, a follow, and a subscribe. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, give us a 5-star rating. It goes a long way to helping us share good info like this with more good people like yourself. Grittiness, mental toughness, resoluteness, resilience, whatever you may call it. You can't have mental toughness without a degree of physical toughness, and it is an unfair advantage in BJJ. There are gritty folks coming to jiu-jitsu, and it's one of those things. Oftentimes, we think we're tough because we do jiu-jitsu. But the people who are really running ahead of us, it's not about any physical talent. It's none of this. It's not athleticism. They are tough mothers. And I wanted to unpack this a little bit because I think that there's many folks out there who are like, I do BJJ. I'm tough. I have mental toughness. And I believe that this is not necessarily the case, even though you can build it. I'm not saying it's innate, but there's some folks out there. They've been through some stuff, and they are the ones who are really progressing. So I wanted to ask that question. Are you gritty, or are you a little bit quitty? Ooh. Are you going to give up? Because I know some folks who are like that. They get a tough round and they sit off. And this isn't about rest rounds. It's not like a fitness thing. It's just like, oh, I just took a beating. No. And you get those people who you submit them and they go, you see them light up. They're like, oh, yeah? Yeah? And it's just,
do it again.
Go on. You know, they really...
Like, please, man, I can't keep beating you up like this.
I feel bad.
Again.
They will themselves into that fire. You know, you see these folks and they're not always young, athletic dudes. Sometimes it's an older person, male or female. Sometimes it's a real quiet, nerdy person. You're like, oh, what's going on there? This person's so tough. Have you encountered people like this, Joe?
Yeah, dog.
Is there a couple of them?
Yeah, I'm thinking about a bunch of people as we go through it. You know, I think you see it in certain individuals, right? And I think you see it the most in the smaller individuals, and you see it the most in women.
Yeah,
because they're generally they're not gifted with the size or the strength of the bigger people in the class.
They have
usually
less advantages, depending.
Yeah, and so it's like in this physical game, you're probably going to take more than your fair share of beatings.
Yeah,
you know, beatings as in like
just
getting roughed up by someone that's bigger and stronger,
just dominated.
Yeah,
like not winning rounds. Like you don't get the dopamine hit of feeling success.
It's always I think of Ari Tabak.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to our boy.
Yeah.
I trained with him, I think, when he was like a kid.
Yeah.
And I think I've told this before, and then there was just all of a sudden, it was like a kid, like small and not particularly strong. And so you could just sort of overpower. And then there was a point where you couldn't do it anymore. And it was like, but this went on for months. You sort of convinced yourself, I still got it over Ari, and then you check in with it and you're like, actually, I can't do shit to him. Yeah. And then the strength starts to catch up.
Yeah.
And then Ari starts just all this is a animal. And you're like, man, he passed my guard and submitted me like multiple times. You're like, I don't know how to stop this kid.
Yes.
And you're like, wait, he's not a kid anymore.
He's a man.
And but it's almost, and it's like you see that person go through that rite of passage of taking beatings, right? Because if you are like a kid stepping into an adult's class,
yes,
you go through that. Yeah. And if they stick it out, those individuals often end up becoming the biggest motherfuckers of all.
Yeah.
Because like they've been tested in a way that most others have not.
Yeah. And I feel that people they say it's a really good test for entrepreneurs, right? And a lot of high-level companies look for young people who've had traumatic experiences in their life and overcome those.
Right.
They do. Like they often ask them, like, what is the biggest challenge you've had to overcome? Oh yeah, like my whole family had to get in a boat and the boat sank and I actually lost my dad and we had to swim to shore and I was in a prison camp and you're like, and now I intern at Google. You're like, oh, right, that's a tough bar.
Remember that story that Charles Sonnen told of his upbringing where he was like brutal, man, where he was like, my neighbors were twins and for their birthday, their dad bought them a Mercedes, but he only bought them one Mercedes. And he's like, imagine that, like twins, you know? He's like, some fucked up times. That kind of shit.
Yeah. He talked about his upbringing. It's quite funny. And I'm not saying that someone can't be gritty if they're from a wealthy background, right? Not at all. Like our boy Fabinho, right? He's from a wealthy family. He's one of the toughest motherfuckers going around. Like maybe he's just a mean motherfucker. I don't know where it comes from because he's lovely to talk to, but to roll, he's a brutal menace.
Yeah,
he wants to put pain on you. I think Kenny Florian said something similar. Like I think maybe I can't remember which fighter was calling Kenny Florian out. This is many years ago. He said, "You're the son of a doctor. You're a rich boy. You're this." And he's like, "Yeah, you know what profession I chose? Hurting people. I could have done anything. You know what I love to do? I get paid to fuck you up, and I love that."
That's
and
mad.
It's like that's even more
twisted. Yeah,
it's even more fucked up. This guy had options and he chose MMA.
Yeah.
Woo, brutal. So the grittiness, I mean, I was a bullied kid and I took beatings. I was stomped. And what I did learn about myself, also being a clumsy kid, I fell down a lot, hit my head a lot. The head trauma might have something to do with it. I have very good pain tolerance. I can take a beating. Like I can literally get pushed off a wall and have the shit kicked out of me by 5 people. And I can kind of dust myself off and still function. Like I have very good pain tolerance. And that's got nothing to do with exercise. That's literally like, if you hurt me, I can still get on with it. And I'm not saying that's not actually a good quality to have. It's like a fighter who has a really good chin. You shouldn't have it in your strategy to
just loves eating shots.
Just getting punched because there's a point at which that tops out.
But it's a handy thing to have.
For jiu-jitsu, it was really good. For taekwondo, it was great. I literally used to get the shit kicked out of me. I one time got kicked so hard in the kidney that I actually had like a small renal artery collapse and I pissed blood. And it was brutal. It was like some of the most pain I've experienced.
Wow.
Very luckily, my kidney didn't die and like it was nothing like that. But yeah, I have had times where I've been in pain. I'm like, no, it's okay. And then, piss blood and the brain's like, that's really bad, man.
It's dick cancer.
You got to go to the hospital. Yeah, we need our dick. Come on, man. And so I don't know if it's disassociation or whatever. I'm like, no, I can get through this. And for different reasons, like you might have had it where you rolled someone really hard and they just didn't. You armbarred them. You knee rode them. You're just basically treating them like a punching bag and they shrug it off.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah.
They're scary.
That's frightening, right? Because they just they're not emotionally affected by it and they just continue.
We had a guy I used to train with back in the day, a Korean dude, Mun Soo, who was just a warrior. I was like, toughness. I've always thought about him. I'm like, that came from a lineage of like samurai for sure, or whatever the Korean equivalent was.
They fought the samurai.
Yeah, I'm just like you would, like he was a judo black belt and we were blue belts together, I think. And he would give you a soft smile when you'd see him, and then when you would roll, there'd just be no expression, and you'd just be putting everything into it, trying to do it, and he just, he wasn't like, you'd never dominated him. You might have edged him out, but you never saw an expression, and you're like, is this even hard for you, man? Like I'm trying to armbar this shit, and just like nothing, It's intimidating. And that's that mind game where you then you've put everything into say a submission attempt and fails and they've given you no indication that it was even a light threat to them.
Yeah.
And so then you're disheartened and deflated.
And then
they just step back in and start putting it on you. And that's a real interesting switch in the paradigm. Here's a message I got on Instagram the other day. Hey guys, just wanted to let you know that my daughter and I both downloaded the Bulletproof for BJJ app and we are loving it so much. I haven't enjoyed going to the gym this much for years. I'm kicking myself that it took me this long to try your programs. Fam, let me tell you, if you haven't checked it out, the Bulletproof for BJJ app is an excellent resource for you to build a strong, flexible body that can perform well on the mats and get injured as little as possible. It is as close to an insurance policy as you can have in this game, and you only need to train 2 to 3 hours a week to get the benefits from it. We have built the programs so that it takes the least amount of time possible so that you can focus on what you love, which is doing jiu-jitsu. If you go to the App Store now, you can start a 2-week trial for free. Simply search Bulletproof for BJJ, download the app, get in, start training, and get instant connection with JT and myself and the coaching staff so that we can help you on the journey. Go to the App Store, get the app. We'll see you on the inside.
There's nothing worse than feeling tired and gassed out and you've only just gotten into your first roll. You know what could be causing this, my friends? Dehydration. Dehydration is an absolute jiu-jitsu killer. What I do to make sure that I don't experience this is I use Sodi. Sodi is today's sponsor. Sodi, SODII.com.au has got you covered with all the flavors of the rainbow. The perfect mix of sodium, potassium, and magnesium keeps the water in your muscles so you can keep rolling longer, harder, and stronger and not feel gassed out. Go to sodi.com.au and use the code Bulletproof15 for 15% off. Get hydrated and roll stronger today. Well, I actually learned that from my Korean master in Taekwondo, Master Jeong, Kim Jeong.
It's a bit generic, isn't it?
It's every Korean name ever. But he was the first ever federated heavyweight champion, and he won with a broken arm.
Wow.
Which is pretty mad, back in 1972, I believe. And he set up the first big school in Australia and whatever's the master of that. And my instructor was under him. He gave no emotions ever. He'd grade us and then he just whispered to my coach and then tap the pen, you get off, you get on. You do something, you were looking for even disapproval. And you didn't get that.
Right.
Oh, what's
some form of acknowledgement.
Please. And he's just emotionless. And that is kind of frightening. Like, you're like, surely there should be an emotional. It's a human thing to respond emotionally. But, that guy was in the military. He'd been through a lot of stuff. And he was just like, stupid white kids jumping around. I don't know what he thought. I never understood what he thought, even when we went to dinners with him and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think when you encounter someone who's been through something really like life-threatening or serious, when when people are just experiencing a bit of simulated fighting, it's like, man, what's this? Like someone who's come from a war zone or someone who's witnessed great horror. What's jiu-jitsu in the face of that?
Yeah.
And look, I don't think you have to be from a war-torn zone. Like, someone can just come in and through their upbringing, whether they were raised on a farm or their parents were particularly tough on them or whatever, that they are unfazed by the challenges jiu-jitsu presents.
Yeah.
And I think we can go the other way, where you meet somebody who the littlest thing happens and they're like, and they just, and they come to training, but they're always a f***ing sook. Like you're like, dude, like this is jiu-jitsu. Like, you're gonna get kneed in the face, or you're gonna get your finger twisted. Like, have you also experienced the opposite of that, Joe, where somebody who maybe they're okay, but they're just not tough at all?
I've not experienced a lot of it.
You probably would have seen it here and there, though.
I remember in a white belt comp, I tapped a guy with knee ride, and I never saw him in another comp again. So he probably wasn't quite cut out for it.
Wrong sport for this guy.
But no, like I've not encountered a lot of that in training, though it does make me think of like individuals who are tough, right? Like say on the competition circuit, but who play up that gamesmanship. Guys like Urbeth Santos. Right, like, you hit me, ref, the whole, sure, football players.
Yeah, sure.
And And sometimes that extends to training. I did roll with a guy once, a Brazilian dude who like had some really over the top reaction to like my knee tapping him on the head or something.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm like, bro, like, come on.
What are you doing?
And he was a high belt. And so I was like, oh, I'm really sorry, He was like, oh, and then like, okay, we can roll again. And I'm like, what's that? I get, that's because, someone like an Herbert Santos, I'm sure he's a tough guy. I'm sure he'd have to be.
Well, he's a mean guy.
He's a mean guy.
He's now in jail, I believe.
That's right, for being a dirtbag.
A terrible human.
But you know what I mean? So maybe that sits a bit separate where it's like you can still be a tough guy, but also be like take a dive. Or just be a sook at times.
I think this is where we can, okay, let's talk about like what is grit, right? It's your ability to endure something which is not just physically uncomfortable, but like very stressful and still find a way to continue. It doesn't mean you're having a great time. You just, however you do it.
Stay in there.
Yeah, you hang in. And yeah, there's a lot to be said for like quiet grittiness, not somebody who's like, I've got tattoos and I've got scars and like.
For sure.
They just.
I mean, I think
they
that
just
is.
bear it. Right?
I think that as a quality is exemplified by most grapplers you meet.
Sure.
They're not, they don't look any particular way.
No.
Some accountant, rolls in and then they're just a hard on the, and you're like, whoa, shit. But go on.
Oh, no, because I was going to say that the positive thing that I want to say, the reason why I am since I read Grit, the book by Angela Duckworth, and there's another book by another female psychologist. I apologize. It's pretty famous, which is just about a similar thing. What is it that makes somebody gritty and stick-to-itness, and can it be cultivated? And yes, it's not it's not a talent per se. It is something that you learn over time, that you overcome challenges and you keep going and you learn, oh, hey, I can deal with some shit. Jiu-Jitsu is a great tool for building grit.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes to the game with grit, they're ahead. They're
that's a great gift to have.
Yeah, definitely. And
Hey, it's super common these days that you want to do some jiu-jitsu learning outside of your time in the academy. And it makes a lot of sense because you only have certain times you can get to the academy, but you might have idle time at a computer or on your phone during the day when you could put 20 minutes into studying some jiu-jitsu. Let me tell you from my own experience, there's a bunch of platforms out there, but by far the most effective platform I have come across and used personally is Submeta. It is the most comprehensive online learning library, and the format of the lessons actually solidify the stuff you're learning. So instead of just sort of spewing out a bunch of techniques and you hoping that you're going to remember them, it actually has a really neat little way of making sure you absorb the techniques and the learnings, and it even hits you with a questionnaire to make sure that you've processed the video you've just watched. Lachlan Giles is on there, B-Team's on there, there's a bunch of great stuff. And right now, you can get $16 off when you use the code Bulletproof16 at checkout. Go to submeta.io, use the code Bulletproof16 to get $16 off and take your learning of jiu-jitsu to the next level.
We had an older gentleman, Pete, I think I've talked about him before, who we think was a spy. He had this epic scar from like here all the way down to here. I think he might have had some illegal weaponry in his house.
Yeah.
Like he had special visas that no one could understand. He would always get pulled in the offices like, why do you have this kind of like level visa clearance? He's like, oh, like, no. He's like, I was an architect. He's like, no, I designed the buildings for this military complex. But he was so tough. The guy could ski. This is why we thought he was a spy. He could ski, like he was a champion skier. He was a crack shot. Like what? What person needs to know how to ski really well, lower their heart rate, and then shoot someone? Like that's some spy shit.
Yeah.
Also, he was so tough, bro. He would guillotine. So here's the example. I saw Pete. This is one of my first days I ever met Pete. He put this like kind of wannabe tough guy unconscious with a guillotine. It was amazing. This guy had longer hair, and it's not Pete. This guy is a blue belt. I didn't see him much. He didn't stick around. This is when Absolute MMA was at South Yarra, when it was a small gym before it moved to St Kilda. The gym had been taken over by Lachlan Giles. It used to belong to kind of Kid Dale. It was an infinity gym, got converted, and it was just a room full of savages. I don't know who this guy was, but this was like a fairly good-looking guy. Longer hair. It looked very like blonde tips. Like looked like he probably went to the salon a little bit.
Yeah.
Had good mani-pedi. Like
Nice.
it's not often that you find a man in a gym like this who's well kept.
Yeah.
Everyone else is just grizzly, gross humans going hard for jiu-jitsu. But he was pretty good. But he would wear ear guards and he would grind the out of you. But if his ear guards went off, he'd be like, "Oh, stop. I don't want to get cauliflower ears. Like, got to protect the asset and shit." Pete, who just didn't give like wild man, you know, he's 72, 75, just tough, strong, like let's just bang. And this guy was not having the success against Pete he wanted, right? And I think he just expected, because they're both blue belts, he expected he was just going to Pete up.
Pete's an older gentleman.
Pete's an old man, but Pete was in there amongst the competitors doing his thing. You know, you got to give it to him for just the balls on him and just wanting the hurt, wanting the work. And this guy just got shitty with Pete, and he just came in for like a blast double, and Pete just went rup, guillotine, pulled the closed guard, and just cranked it on, and then Pete said, "You should tap, and this guy's just, and Pete just held it, and then the guy just went limp, and Pete went, "We got to sleep up." Everyone come over, put the guy's legs up, and the guy's like, "No, what happened?" You know, he's like, "Bro, you just got put out by a pensioner, dude. Like, you don't know who you're with here. That guy is tough. You are not. Your ear guards cannot make you tough." Like, you know, like you're kidding yourself in thinking that.
But you think he wasn't gritty because he got slept?
Not because he got slept. It's because he didn't come back.
Ah, right.
Pete kept coming back. I think Pete's a brown belt now. Like, that guy's
Pete's the king. He slept old, mate.
bro. He
last
is.
week.
He is, but
Been elevated to God status.
But the thing is that I knew that guy was not tough because as soon as I put pressure on him, he'd kind of like give up. There was give up. There was, you know, say, "Oh, there's no quit in that person." There's a lot of quit in this guy.
Right.
He got his ear guards the wrong way. No, you're going to hurt my ears. I can't allow this. Like, oh man, this is grappling, right?
Don't you want to look like us?
Well, no, I think he definitely did not, you know, and that's okay. Look, you know, I've spoken to people who are really high level, really tough kickboxers. They can't handle the chin in your eye socket grindingness of jiu-jitsu. And it's not that they're not tough, but jiu-jitsu, I feel, requires a degree of grittiness, which is, it's very unflashy. It's not something sexy.
No.
You know,
I mean, I would just say to that specific example of, you know, striking versus that it's just a different expression of grittiness.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think about getting in there and sparring with someone and copping shins,
the
and I'm
headaches
just like, oh, I don't want that.
Yeah, it's different.
You know?
It's just a different form, and it's not to say that striking isn't gritty. I'm just saying that, like, I have seen very high level kickboxers come to jiu-jitsu and just detest the level of.
I don't want your sweat in my mouth.
It's just really it's overwhelming how uncomfortable that situation can be on so many levels, and that if we want to get good at jiu-jitsu, we have to just your gross tolerance increases a lot.
This always brings me back to a friend of ours, Dan Sester.
Yeah.
Who, you know, was a kung fu guy and was always like, "Bro, you're never going to get me doing that shit." He said, "I don't want your balls in my face." He's a blue belt now. He loves balls in the face. He loves it.
And he loves sharing that with other people.
Yeah, just like, I love jiu-jitsu. How good is it? Like, you change, bro.
Yeah, it gets you. And I think the amazing thing is, this is why I believe jiu-jitsu does, for the most part, is such a community in just respecting another person. If someone says, "Oh, I've trained for 10 years," you're like, "Oh," the belt level almost doesn't matter. I mean, if they're a white belt for 10 years, you're like, "Oh, why that?" Because you expect people to have a certain level of progression. But to stick at something so uncomfortable and so and not sexy, you're like, you're tough.
Yeah.
You are. And it's I think this is the thing that's really underestimated. There's plenty of people out there going, oh, I do pickleball, or I do this recreationally. They do it once a week and they count that as part of their identity. Where there's jiu-jitsu folks who are absolutely eating shit 3 to 5 times a week for years, still not necessarily being esteemed as being great, but they love that. I think that sense of toughness you can get from it, like your own sense of self and self-esteem that is built through enduring this tough shit, is possibly one of the biggest rewards out of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
Yeah. But there it is, folks. It is one of those things that if you don't have it, or you question whether or not you're a gritty person, jiu-jitsu can definitely get you there. But if you hear this and you're a gritty person and you're like, oh, jiu-jitsu, yeah, I could do this. I think it is absolutely the biggest advantage you can have, and is absolutely going to mean you're going to do so well at jiu-jitsu above any other trait you could have, is the grittiness. Folks, thanks for sticking around. We appreciate it. You made it this far in the conversation. And if you did, we give you a high five. We salute you. And we would like you to return the favor by liking, subscribing. We appreciate it. It means a lot.